Coming to you live from a Walmart parking lot in a men's restroom, this is Thicc Man Inc.
We are live here with your host, Tristan Kilgannon, and ESPN featured athlete, Isaiah Ashley. We're going to be covering various topics today from Week 6 of the NFL season. Like the video, subscribe, comment down below what you think about each game we talk about. And Isaiah, you can start us off.
Yeah, there was a beautiful game of Minneapolis this week. The Minnesota Vikings beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-20. And ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I'm going to let you in on a little sports betting secret I've discovered. I can guarantee a victory for any team you want. I can make the Dolphins go 1-15 if I so choose. For the Bengals fans out there who are tanking for Tua, I can get the Giants a win to prove that Daniel Jones wasn't a horrible pick. And you know how I do it? I bet on the team they're playing against. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I bet against the Minnesota Vikings this week in order to get them to beat the Eagles. It was a brilliant tactical move on my part. I'm glad it paid off. My wallet's a little bit lighter. We will not disclose the amount I lost, but I'm still happy I did it.
How can you bet against your favorite team? That's fucking insane to me. To my stomach, if I knew that I bet against the Giants and they won the game. Yes, that's how that works. If I bet against the Giants and when the Giants were playing the Patriots and I bet against them when it was 14-14, I would just be feeling sick there. Now they went on to lose and the Patriots covered the spread, but then I'd still feel like a prick.
Now I'm going to stop you right here and ask how the Giants got into this. But let me tell you something, Tristan, because you don't seem to understand.
You're the one who mentioned Daniel Jones.
You don't seem to understand. I know how terrible my sports betting tendencies are. I know how inaccurate I am on a consistent basis. To the shock of many people, I have made quite a few wrong monetary decisions in gambling, least of which would be predicting a NBA Finals sweep for the Warriors. But leaving that aside, I guaranteed a victory for my own team. And if it costs a little bit of money, so what?
Yeah, but how can you feel good about that? You lost money betting against
because my
your
team won, and I did it for a reason.
You should be ashamed of yourself. You're almost as bad as bandwagon Seahawks fans when they won the Super Bowl and bandwagon Warriors fans when they won the NBA championship.
Well, I would disagree. Let's talk about the actual game. Kirk Cousins did not have a terrible game for once. I was in shock. Threw a very, very nice 333 yards, 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, big day. 7 receptions, 167 yards, 3 touchdowns. Should have been closer to 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, but Kirk Cousins badly overthrew him once. Who would have guessed that happened? Thielen had a nice day, but all in all, good day for Purple People Eaters. Wentz looked off, get hit a lot. All in all, I enjoyed myself watching it.
To be honest, I wasn't surprised by the outcome of this game. I felt like the Vikings were carrying momentum in the game after beating up on the Giants. I feel like Kirk Cousins, he's been building confidence. I feel like their momentum is going to start to snowball into the rest of the season. I feel like they're starting to find their identity with Kirk Cousins actually being able to throw passes now. But they're out there eating the Vikings receivers' dust the whole entire game. They need Ronald Darby back so fucking badly. They made Kirk Cousins look like he was living in Dot City.
Well, keeping it with the Eagles a little bit, Zach Brown, a former Redskin, I believe, was spreading a little bit of hate towards Mr. Cousins before the game, saying he was the weakest link of their offense. Kirk Cousins then had that good game I was telling you about. And you know what? Zach Brown is still right. You think one game or even 2 games in a row against team secondaries with the lateral mobility of Tristan is going to impress me.
Hey,
no, I'm not going to sit here and let Kirk Cousins
I'm an elite flag football player.
Kirk Cousins is still the worst quarterback in that division, and that's saying something considering Mitchell Trubisky's a starter. He was absolutely right. Now, he may have got cut for his comments and then getting blown up against Cook and Thielen and the crew, but hey, I agree with him. Hopefully, he can find free agent success somewhere else.
I mean, Kirk Cousins' only interception wasn't even bad. It was entirely Stephon Diggs' fault with it bouncing off, going through Stephon Diggs' hands and then bouncing off his helmet. And Zendeo, it was an easy interception. So everything Kirk Cousins did that game was very close to perfection.
Yes, but he was playing a terrible secondary. I do not think it was a good win for them. It was a good win for the Vikings. It's not a good win for Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins stinks.
I mean, that being said, for the Eagles, I'm personally not that concerned for them. I think they still have a very good roster. They have a top 10 quarterback in the league in Carson Wentz. But going forward, the thing that I'm going to want to watch is how the play calling develops. Because when I was watching the Eagles offense I think I watched the first half of the game, but it looked like Wentz was not being put in a position to win. His coaches were just making him have to make hard throws down the field against the Vikings secondary, which has been very good the past 3 years. They're not they're not putting him in position to win like they did with Nick Foles last year. So I think that's something to look forward to, something that is easily fixable, more creativity in the offense, and they need more backs in the backfield because Jordan Howard back there isn't going to cut it.
Well, we are going to roll on to another NFC North game, this time featuring the Lions and the Packers. A 23-22 shootout. That shootout's in big parentheses because this game was just a travesty to watch. How are you just going to take the Lions' lead and give it to the Packers? A lot of people look at this and say, oh, the Lions blew a 10-point lead. No, the Packers had a 10-point handicap and still took a last-second field goal to beat the Detroit Lions. For the second time this year, they've just been absolutely screwed by officiating. Two blatant hands to the shoulder pads calls were called hands to the face against the defensive end. And I just was sitting there watching the Packers get bailed out again and again and just preparing for the litany of praise I was going to have to hear for Aaron Rodgers beating a Detroit Lions team. The Detroit Lions are maybe the best team in the North and should be 4-0-1 with wins over the Chiefs and the Packers. This is just an embarrassment for the Shield.
While I agree with you on the fact that the refs are fucking horrific and those calls, I have a feeling Blakeman, the ref who made those calls, he had a flashback to when he was in Pee Wee football and he was getting his ass beat at left tackle and tossed around, and he felt bad for, I think it was Bakhtiari, who both calls he was the one getting his ass whooped by Trey Flowers. But you have to keep in mind that the Lions did everything to also lose the game. They had 5 field goals, 5 drives that could have been touchdowns. They stalled 5 times. You cannot stall 5 times when you're playing against Aaron Rodgers. And other elite quarterbacks in the league, such as Russell Wilson, who found a way to do it against the Browns. We'll talk about that game later. Aaron Rodgers, who does it all the time. Tom Brady, who does it all the time. They find ways to win. And Matt Stafford just does not do that. He cannot carry the team. He makes some good throws deep down the field, has a hell of an arm, but he never is able to find ways to win. I feel like that's his fault. Shout out to his wife, though. She's beating brain cancer. That's pretty cool. He's just not an elite quarterback.
No one's saying Stafford's an elite quarterback. They're saying the Lions are getting screwed. And I feel bad for the Lions. Think about how terrible it must be to be a Detroit sports fan. Your best years watching Michael Jordan whip the bad boy Pistons in the 90s. After that, it's been downhill. Red Wings are awful. The Lions have had a 0-16 season and done nothing else. Your best players like Barry Sanders and Megatron keep retiring in their prime. And now look at you. You're getting screwed by a horrendous ref ball.
I just don't see it as – you can't be that mad when your offense isn't able to get the ball in the end zone and 15-year points come off field goals.
I think you're vastly wrong about that, and I think the Lions should have won that game. But
they scored 1 touchdown. You can't be mad when you score 1 touchdown in a football game.
Excuse me.
Transitioning to a game with a team that I absolutely hate, one of the team that the Lions always seem to play on Thanksgiving – the Cowboys versus Jets. The Jets took down the Cowboys 24-22, getting their very first win of the season. Cowboys now dropped to 3-3 on the year. And as much as they are suffering greatly in Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins' absence, their O-line now is Swiss cheese. When you lose the best left tackle in the league to an ankle injury, the drop-off in talent is going to be severe. You're just not going to have anything close to him out there. But that being said, this game showed, and the past, I think last game, I don't remember which game Tyron Smith got injured, but this game showed Prescott simply cannot carry a team that is missing a few pieces, and it shows that he shouldn't get paid. Since the first 3 games, his salary contract offer it's been going downhill. And Isaiah, I told you a couple weeks ago when the Cowboys got clobbered by the Packers, and when they got clobbered, they didn't get clobbered, but they lost by 2 points to the Saints. But when they lost to the Saints, and now they got out coaches, sorry Jets. I told you they were fake, and it feels so good to be right.
Here's the dealio. I'd agree with you that the Cowboys have been in a slump, and I agree with you that there's issues. Those issues aren't Dak Prescott. I mean, he was having a good night. He wasn't throwing interceptions, wasn't turning the ball over, had about a 70% completion percentage, and every time he dropped back to pass, they were guaranteed 7 yards. It was 7 yards per attempt, and he had a rushing touchdown. I don't see how they had that bad of a game. I think the real issues were, one, on defense, giving up north of 330 yards to Sam. Terribly inefficient. You can't do that and win a football game. And you want to know what those two things stem back to? Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett should not be coaching an NFL team. Jason Garrett should not be coordinating an NFL team. Jason Garrett should be a position coach for I don't know what, and maybe an assistant cheerleader with all the clapping he does. He is not a good coach. He's not putting his team in positions to succeed, and I just don't see how he keeps his job after this year, even through this year.
While I heavily disagree on the Dak Prescott point, I think he can't carry a team. He's proven it. Whenever he misses his left tackle, he misses Amari Cooper goes out, he suddenly can't seem to win any football games. But on Jason Garrett, he is just – the calls he makes are mind-boggling. He called QB power on 4th and 2 down by 4 in the red zone, and they don't get it. So not only is Dak incapable of converting, but Garrett thought Dak was capable of converting. So
you can't bash
his continuous
Dak Prescott after saying the O-line's terrible and for not converting on QB power. That's not really on him.
No, the QB. He's not capable of converting because he just sucks. He's dog shit.
I'm sorry, he's the best quarterback in the division, but keep going.
Daniel Jones is the best quarterback in the division. But I think Jason Garrett will be out of here when the Cowboys go 8-8 again. And the Eagles game next week will be a big deciding factor for that and their season.
Big deciding factor. Have you said your piece? Have you showed your clear implicit bias?
I said my piece on the Cowboys.
All right, quickly on the Jets. Sam Darnold, like I said, 338 yards, 2 TDs. Bell didn't have a giant game. Only 53 yards, I believe. I don't know. But that's for a testament. Defense looked off. Blame Garrett.
What we saw from Sam Darnold is that he is a true force multiplier, unlike Dak Prescott. He got better after mono. 2 TDs. He did have an interception, so, and he's easily the best quarterback from his class. It'll be exciting to watch him grow, and he is infinitely better than Baker this year. Baker's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and we'll get to Baker in a couple minutes.
Yeah, just going to ignore the fact Lamar Jackson got drafted in that class, I see.
Lamar Jackson's all right.
Just going to ignore the fact
he's got a better team around him.
Also, here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and we're going to move on. You realize Michael Jordan played with the flu game and didn't stay away from his team for 4 weeks with it? Like, that's kind of the point of the
Omano's a little bit different than the
flu.
flu
The night before and then come and play. Not the same thing at all.
Mono's a little different. When you have mono, you lose so much weight. I guarantee you Darnold is down a lot of weight compared to 4 weeks ago.
Well, you know what? Darnold shouldn't have been kissing little kids. Anyway, moving on. The Houston Texans beat the Kansas City Chiefs 31-24. An exciting game to be sure, with offensive firepower and offensive mistakes on both sides. Highlight of the day was Patrick Mahomes, who had, quote-unquote, a down day for him with, quote-unquote, only 273 yards and 3 TDs. And Will Fuller, who had 5 receptions for 44 yards, but should have had 8 receptions for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. Quite the offensive ineptitude there. But what were your thoughts on the game, Tristan?
I mean, to me, I thought it was a great game. Texans Chiefs, 2 of the best teams in the AFC. I think both are going to be making the playoffs this year. But I think the Chiefs are just simply a team struggling to put it all together with all the injuries they've had. Sammy Watkins injured, Eric Fisher injured, Chris Jones injured, Anthony Hitchens injured, Kendall Fuller injured. The list goes on. All starters. They did get tired. Jeez. They're just finding themselves. And for the Texans, I thought it was a great win for them. They beat who everyone thinks is the best team in the AFC. So that's got to give them a big
Nobody
boost of
thinks the
confidence.
Chiefs are better than the Patriots.
I do. I would not say that Watson outdueled Mahomes because he threw 2 bad interceptions, but he's continuously proving he has that it factor, which Dak Prescott does not have. He finds ways to win. The sky is the limit for Watson. He just needs to continue to get a better O-line. He got Laramie Tunsil now, so that's been helping him out. And it always seems to be like the Texans defense performs and limits the other team.
Yeah, some of it was on the defense. I'd say more of it was on the offense for the Chiefs. Mahomes was injured. He was hobbling around out there. While the explosive quickness is a part of his game and taking it away doesn't really limit his arm so much, him not being able to run out of the pocket does. I think that was an issue. I think that showed a little bit, but Texans are a good team, making me think I was wrong about my AFC South predictions, but I never admit being wrong, so it doesn't matter.
Our AFC South predictions are looking pretty good as far as records right now.
Pretty good.
With the Colts doing decent, the Texans are doing pretty good. We'll review that at the end of the year for all our loyal viewers.
Yeah, shout out to you three.
Moving on to another NFC matchup, 49ers took down the Rams 20-7 in what was one of the worst offensive performances I've ever seen by any team ever. 168 yards of total offense. That's fucking pathetic. The Rams O-line is just god-awful. They can't run block. They can't pass block. McVay is not figuring out creative ways to move the ball downfield. It seems like the NFL is figuring him out.
But, yeah, McVay didn't have a great night, but at the same time, what are you supposed to do when Malcolm Brown, Dale Henderson are your 2 biggest offensive threats? Gurley was hurt. Brandon Cooks wasn't a factor.
Tyler Higbee isn't the worst tight end. He's been having a good year as far as an average tight end.
I'm going to be very honest with you. A good year for an average tight end is not world beater stuff, particularly when you're playing against a good team.
Also, Todd Gurley, he's been having a horrible year also. He's not as explosive as he used to be, and I don't think the problem is not having Todd Gurley on the field. It's the O-line. When you can't block for running back, no one's going to be able to make plays. You could have Christian McCaffrey, Saquon back there, who are probably the 2 most talented backs in the league right now, and I don't think they'd be putting up big numbers with the way that line looks.
Well, you realize the Giants have a horrible offensive line. Saquon's putting up big numbers with them if he's playing, right?
I think the Giants' offensive line now is better than the Rams.
Homer. But, anywho,
that's not being a homer.
Let's talk about the 49ers for a second. They're 5-0. Imagine if the San Francisco 49ers had a real quarterback instead of a career backup who looked good in the New England Patriots offensive system. Oh, man. If they can get rid of Garoppolo and somehow get Jalen Hurts in this next year's draft, because I think he may fall a little bit, they are going to be set. But they have such a good team. They don't have any real giant offensive names besides Kittle, but he's a tight end, so hey, not them.
Kittle's a fucking monster.
Is the best tight end in the league right now, but that doesn't change the fact he's a tight end.
That's true.
But the defense is really where they shine. A bunch of grinders. They've got the other Bosa brother, I believe. It's just a good setup for him. Richard Sherman, who I'm going to briefly talk about not here in the next segment, but he's good at football. We'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, my big takeaway from this game for the 49ers was that Kyle Shanahan was the best young coach in the league, and nobody's really talking about it because of the Rams' success. He's been putting the 49ers in a position to win. I was completely wrong about them in my predictions. I think I only had them getting 5 wins, so I feel really stupid for that one. Their defensive line been producing like no other, maybe the most talented defensive line in the league with all the first-round draft picks they have on there. And the reason I thought they would do so bad is because of Garoppolo, but, he's at least serviceable. He's getting them to a 5-0 record. So,
well, the young coach thinks an unnecessary shot. What's winning them games is the fact their GM is a wizard and recovered from the decimation of Harbaugh leaving and Kaepernick stinking and all their best players retiring 5 years ago. He has done a masterful job tanking a little bit and rebuilding a great team around him, and he deserves more credit than he's going to get, but GMs don't get credit in the NFL, so hey. Jalen Ramsey, the lad.
What do you have to say about Jalen Ramsey?
I'm sorry, what?
What do you have to say about Jalen
The
Ramsey?
lad who demanded a trade, the lad who wanted to see the birth of his son, the lad who had a sore back, the guy who had a bum ankle has finally worked his way out of Florida into Los Angeles. And it is a good day for him and a bad day for Gardner Minshew.
I see. My opinion on the Jalen Ramsey trade is it's not going to help. I don't think it's going to help the Rams that much because at the end of the day, they traded away Marcus Peters, who was a boomer bust corner. Sometimes made a big play, sometimes opposite of that, and they lost their best corner in Aqib Talib. So it's not adding any more depth to the secondary. Of course, you're going to be able to lock down the number one receiver. You have Nickel Roby-Coleman to play in the slot, who's a solid slot corner. But I don't think it's going to be adding any wins to the record this year.
You don't think being able to take away the number one receiver on most teams is going to cause any games to flip?
I think of course, it's going to help. I don't think it's going to flip any games because they've got too many holes. And it's not exactly a good idea when four players on your team take up half the salary cap. That's a questionable decision.
Yeah, not really. Securing a quarterback for the future and the best defensive player in football. And then Jalen Ramsey. But, hey, we'll have to wait.
And then a running back who sucks balls now.
Your opinions on Todd Gurley show that you did not watch the Week 5 games. I believe he had a very nice Week 5. But we will continue this observation of the Los Angeles Rams and the undefeated San Francisco 49ers in future episodes. Now we are moving on to the Seattle Seahawks versus the Cleveland Browns.
For this game, it just, Baker Mayfield has been absolutely awful this year. He's on pace to throw the most interceptions in a season than any other quarterback in the last 30 years. That'd be 29 interceptions. I believe that ties with someone. I don't remember who ties with, and it's not Eli Manning before you say that. Eli Manning threw 27 in the season, not 29. And it sounds like he's feeling a little too dangerous to me. I do not think he's a bad player, however. And it is the Cleveland effect. Despite anything they have good going for them, they cannot perform. It causes Baker to throw more interceptions, Freddie Kitchens to call bad plays. It's just the fact that the team is located in Cleveland, and that is inhibiting them. The only player who seems to be performing right now is Nick Chubb, and the offense cannot run through only him if they're going to win games. Kitchens needs to get out of his grandma's kitchen and needs to get into the film room more, start calling good plays, and hopefully the Browns can win some more games.
You thought you had a really witty line with the grandma's kitchen thing there, didn't you? Well,
I did. You're proud of it?
With you on the Freddie Kitchens being an absolute liability. I'm going to go into depth a little bit there. Every play, it feels like you have them running four verts with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. going straight downfield. And you either have Nick Chubb joining him down there or you have him blocking in the backfield with a suspect offensive line and a young quarterback that's going to lead to interceptions. There's not a check down available to Baker. It's not a series of good options. You're going to force him to either throw a bunch of picks or you're going to force him to run the ball, which he is not athletically capable of doing. He is not in a good system right now. And as much as I bash Garrett for being a bad coach, I think Freddie Kitchens is by far the worst coach in the NFL right now who's not deliberately tanking.
Bad coach. I also feel like he's going through a big learning process, going from a position coach to a coordinator within 1 year to a head coach next year. So you have to give him some slack. And with Cleveland's history of just having a revolving door when it comes to coaches, I think you have to give Freddie Kitchens a bit of a leash to see if it can work out, because it is also reported that he's friends with Baker Mayfield and they get along well. So you got to give him some chance. I disagree with you
somewhat on that. You have Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., David Njoku, Nick Chubb, and Baker Mayfield on your offense, and you're completely inept. It just what he's doing isn't working. If he keeps this up, he needs to be fired. The Browns cannot win with this current style of offensive play. Their defense is solid. The defense is generally playing well, keep them in games, but you just can't win games with Freddie Kitchens as your coach calling four verts with no checkdowns.
Yeah, but you have to give him a leash. Some coaches, they go through a learning process. Bill Belichick was, of course, that was in Cleveland, so you can argue the Cleveland effect. But I think you have to give him somewhat of a leash. He's learning as a coach. It's just going to look bad again. Cleveland goes to another coach. Baker, a young quarterback, has another coach, new offensive system again. So I don't think it'd be good for their young QB and Baker. I don't think it'd be good for their franchise and the media narrative surrounding them.
Name one young coach who has had this much talent in their organization and still struggled this much.
I can't, to be honest.
Because it's a completely unprecedented phenomenon.
But most other young coaches have more experience at a head coaching or coordinator level, like Kyle Shanahan or even Sean McVay.
I say get him out of here. You think he deserves a little bit of a leash. Does that sum it up?
Basically, yeah. And transitioning then to the Seahawks, Russell Wilson has showed why he's a Hall of Famer this year and in this game. His team was not putting themselves in a position to win. They were down 20-6 in the first quarter, but he picked them up and carried them all the way to the promised land. He makes plays that should not be made. He will 1,000% win MVP this year unless Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes step it up. Patrick Mahomes' ankle gets a little bit healthier, but I think he hasn't thrown any interceptions. And like I said at the beginning of the year, I had the Seahawks going 13-3. I think my prediction is going to come true with the way he's playing.
Well, the whole MVP thing is going to happen for two reasons. One, I'm just going to come back and put up better numbers, but Wilson's a better story and is finally being seen as a top 5 quarterback, so he's definitely getting it this year. But the underappreciated part of this game was Chris Carson. Phenomenal running performance, 24 carries, 124 yards, and a touchdown. He was a big part, and while some teams may have completely abandoned the pass, or abandoned the run, when down this much, the Seahawks did not, and they kept pounding up the middle with them. I was a big fan of that. Big fan.
I mean, Russell Wilson ran the ball really well himself. 9 carries, 31 yards, 1 touchdown.
And you don't see him getting called a running back. Shout out to Lamar Jackson.
Well, I mean, the way Russell Wilson runs, he slides every time. He rolled out for 4 yards. Probably could have got another 2, but he decides to slide because he doesn't want to get hurt.
Almost like he's their best player. But we both think Russell Wilson's the real deal and in line for the MVP. We are going to close this week talking about our pal, Richard Sherman. Now, viewers, I assume you're familiar with the little situation we had in Week 5. Thicc did not film an episode. Well, Richard Sherman, in a post-game interview, claimed that Baker Mayfield, the young legend, the Clevelander, did not shake his hand in the pre-game, post-game, I don't know, in a coin flip situation. And video evidence was later released showing that, in fact, he shook Richard Sherman's hand. And I'm just wondering, why do you need to do that? You're an established NFL cornerback. Everyone thinks you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. You've had success on whatever team you've been on, and you need to do this little Bush League type stuff to get yourself psyched up. You need to lie to yourself and your teammates to try and generate some sort of hype. And then to take that and continue that to a post-game interview shows you are delusional or have got some mental issues, which, hey, I've seen his haircut. He may have some of those.
Well, I don't know if you saw his apology on Pat McAfee's show. He did apologize for saying that because in fact, Baker Mayfield did shake his hand, but he specified that the way Baker Mayfield treated him in the pregame captain introductions or whatever, the way Baker Mayfield treats most of his opponents with arrogance, that doesn't sit well with veterans. So I think he was truly disgruntled. I don't think Baker Mayfield probably treats other players or opponents the best way, which, could be good, but as a young player, that tends to piss veterans off. And I think that's just what went down there.
I'm not going to take the word of some guy who literally just got proven to be a liar in the very same interview. I appreciate what he's trying to say, except I just don't believe him. This is some Bush League stuff. I think Sherman should face some consequences, whether that being booed vigorously.
Consequences?
I don't know, having to decrease the amount of words he's allowed to say in post-game interviews.
Maybe he has to listen to our podcast.
That'd be a pretty bad punishment, particularly listening to some of your garbage takes. But maybe you should have to cut his hair off.
We cannot cut Richard Sherman's hair off.
And let some air through his ears, help him out a little bit. But that has been the Week 6 of Thicc Man Inc. Tell us what you think down in the comments below.
Let us know what you think about Isaiah's Isaiah betting against his favorite team and then his favorite team going on to win. Let us know how you would feel if you made that same decision. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe. See you next time.